James Carter had spent 7 years proving that loyalty wasn't something you talked about. It was something you showed every day. As a single father living in Boston, Massachusetts, he had learned to balance demanding work with raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Every morning he prepared her breakfast, checked her school bag, and reminded her to call him if she needed anything. Then he drove downtown to the headquarters of Grant Holdings, where he worked as a senior operations manager. James wasn't the kind of employee who demanded attention. He preferred results during his 7 years at the company. He had helped reduce operating costs, improve production schedules, and rescue several projects that had been close to failure. His co-workers trusted him because he never took credit for their work. But the company's new CEO, Victoria Grant, didn't know James that well. Victoria had taken over 6 months earlier and was determined to make aggressive changes. She wanted faster results, lower expenses, and executives who would follow her instructions. Without questioning them, James respected her position, but he didn't always agree with her decisions. One Monday morning, James discovered something unusual. While reviewing the company's financial reports, several payments were being routed through a subsidiary that didn't appear to have a legitimate business purpose. He investigated quietly. The more he looked, the more concerning the numbers became. Millions of dollars were moving through accounts connected to outside contractors. James suspected someone inside the company was manipulating invoices. He immediately prepared a report. "Miss Grant," he said during a private meeting, "I think we have a serious financial problem." Victoria barely looked away from her computer. "How serious?" "Potentially millions." She sighed. "James, I'm dealing with a dozen priorities right now. I understand, but this shouldn't be ignored." Victoria finally looked at him. "Send the report to accounting." "I already did." "Then let them handle it." James left the office disappointed. Over the next several weeks, he continued monitoring the transactions. The suspicious payments increased. He warned his supervisor again. Nothing happened. Then, one afternoon, James received an unexpected message. "CEO office meeting required." He entered Victoria's office at 3 Mayor. Victoria sat behind her desk, with a termination document in front of her. James immediately sensed something was wrong. "You wanted to see me." Victoria pushed the document toward him. "Your employment ends today." James stared at the paper. "Why corporate restructuring?" "But my department just completed the biggest efficiency project this company has seen in years." "I know." "Then why?" Victoria's expression remained cold. "We're moving in a different direction." James took a slow breath. He thought about Lily. He thought about the mortgage. Then he looked at Victoria. "I understand." He picked up his belongings and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped. He reached into his briefcase and placed a sealed envelope on Victoria's desk. She frowned. "What is that?" James looked at her calmly. "Something you should have read weeks ago." Then he walked out. Victoria stared at the envelope. She had no idea that the document inside would force her to question everything she believed about James and her own leadership. Victoria stared at the envelope for several seconds after James left her office. She had expected anger, an argument, or perhaps a desperate request for another chance. Instead, James had walked away quietly and left behind a sealed envelope. She opened it. The first page was a financial analysis. Victoria frowned as she began reading. Then her expression changed. The document detailed millions of dollars in suspicious payments moving through a subsidiary controlled by one of the company's outside contractors. James had traced the transactions for weeks and identified several irregular invoices. Victoria turned. The page attached were copies of emails, transaction records, and internal reports. At the bottom was a warning James had sent to management weeks earlier. "Immediate investigation recommended." Victoria looked at the date. It had been ignored. She continued reading. James had discovered that the suspicious payments were connected to a senior executive who had been secretly approving inflated contracts. The final page contained something unexpected, a complete recovery plan James had outlined. How the company could freeze the suspicious accounts, terminate the fraudulent contracts, recover part of the lost money, and protect itself from further damage. Victoria sat back in her chair. He had been fired while trying to protect the company. She looked at the photograph attached to the last page. It showed James standing beside a smiling little girl. Underneath it, he had written, "Daddy always does the right thing." Victoria's eyes filled with emotion. Her phone suddenly rang. It was the chairman. "Victoria, we have a problem." She swallowed. "I know." "No, you don't understand." The audit committee just discovered irregularities in several accounts. Victoria looked down at James's report. I have a report that explains everything. There was silence. Who prepared it? James Carter, the chairman, paused. James. Yes, where is he? Victoria looked toward the office door. I fired him. Another silence. Then the chairman's voice became serious. You fired the man who found this. Victoria closed her eyes. Yes. Within an hour, the board launched an emergency investigation. James's evidence was accurate. The company had been losing millions through fraudulent contracts. The executive responsible was suspended, and federal authorities were notified, but Victoria couldn't stop thinking about James. She found his address through company records and drove to his neighborhood that evening. James was outside his house helping his daughter with a bicycle. When he saw Victoria's car, he stood up. Miss Grant. Victoria approached slowly. I came to apologize. James looked confused. You don't owe me an apology. I do. She explained everything. Then she held out an envelope. Inside was an offer reinstating James with a significant promotion. James looked at it. I appreciate it. But I need to know something first. Victoria nodded. What? Will you listen next time someone warns you about something important? Victoria lowered her eyes. Yes. James smiled. Then maybe I'll come back. His daughter looked up. Daddy, are you going back to work? James laughed. Maybe Victoria smiled for the first time. She understood that leadership wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about having the humility to recognize them and the courage to fix them.